A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was in college. Well, actually, not a galaxy, several states away. I was part of a campus group, a Bible study group, and there were a number of students that had been recently saved. And when they were saved, they oftentimes came out of a certain culture in which a big part of their lifestyle was on the weekends to go down to what we called the hill and go to the bars and drink and go to other people's places and drink. And drinking alcohol excessively was a very big part of their lifestyle. And when they got saved, that was something they didn't really want to participate in. In fact, for some of them, they so associated that activity with their previous lifestyle that they were like, it was an all or nothing. You couldn't, if you were a believer now, you just couldn't participate in that. Now, they didn't think that you lost your salvation, but they just could not understand in any way how a believer could participate in going down to the hill or going any place and drinking alcohol, because it was such a part of that previous lifestyle that lifestyle was so wrong before they were saved in their minds that they just didn't want to participate that. And anyway, fast forward now to the present, and my wife and I are visiting a German restaurant, and there's a group of people that come in and sit down at this table, and they all sit down next to their plates, Bibles. And then they all take hands and they hold hands and they pray out loud as a group, not annoyingly so. They're just, you could tell that they're praying over there. And they're visiting, and then you can tell there's a group of friends, and I don't know, maybe 10 of them. And then all of a sudden, beer steins start arriving at their table, and not everybody, but some of them. And I'm thinking, this is a real change, because we have moved from this culture in which people were saved out of this excessive drinking and they wanted nothing whatsoever to do with it. It scandalized them into a culture now in which, oh, well, we're under grace and we're under liberty, and as long as you don't drink to excess, as long as you don't drink to drunkenness, it's okay. And I'm not here to address the appropriateness of one view or the other than to say I use that as an illustration for what Paul talks about here, beginning in Romans 14, and now he's getting to the heart of the issue with regard to this stability. It started with the issue of the sin nature back in chapters 5 through 8. But now he's dealing with a couple of issues that certain people are going to have within their assemblies. He says in verse 1 of Romans chapter 14, now accept or receive, accept the one who is weak in the faith. Now, it's not just weak in faith in general. There's a definite article here with the word faith. And he uses that because he's actually talking about, when he says the faith, he's talking about that collection of promises that constitute our Christian life. And one of those promises that we've looked at the end of Romans 8, and there's actually two of them, but they're very related, is that nothing can separate you from the love of Christ, and nothing can separate you from the love of God unto you in Christ. Those are two promises that many of us as Christians recite, but it is a struggle to accept the reality of those promises, to really believe, which is simply the verb form of the word faith, to really believe those promises. So there are some, he says, who are weak in the faith, and he says, receive them. Receive them. Bring them into yourselves. That's fine. But not then to, New American Standard has, not to have quarrels over opinions, or the Greek, not to disputes over things involving doubts. This word diakrisis probably having the idea of things where there might be doubtful matters. There, people are being divided, and you have a form of this word down below. Now, one example that he gives us in verse 2. He says, one person has faith that he may eat all things. Now let's put this in the context of the city of Rome where he's writing. In Rome, there were all around that city temples. And in those temples, there were idols to all these various Roman gods, because the Romans believed you could have lots of gods, and that was okay. And if you were raising meat, let's say you're raising beef or you're raising sheep or goats, and you worship these gods, but you sell this meat, you would take that meat very likely up to one of those temples early in the morning, have it slaughtered by the priests up there, offer some of that meat to your idol, and then go down and sell the 80% left of that meat in the marketplace. Now you get good. You get two things out of that. You got in good with your Roman god, and you get to sell it to your customers. Woo! Win-win for the unbelieving Roman entrepreneur or person, shepherd, beef raiser, rancher. I don't know if they had ranchers in the first century. But that's the type of situation you have going on. And so as a result, you had people in Rome that were believers that, like my friends many years ago in college, they had previously, before their salvation, been involved in worship of those idols. And now they know that there's a really good chance that that meat in the marketplace has been offered already to an idol. And so they're reluctant to eat any meat because they don't want to eat meat that has been associated with an idol sacrifice. Yeah. You and I don't understand this. They're not being vegetarians for health. They're being vegetarians because they don't want to accidentally eat meat that was offered to one of those false gods around there. And so as a result, that person, he says, one person has faith and he eats everything. In other words, he believes the promise. Nothing can separate him from the love of God. And so it doesn't bother him. He is not, as he said back in verse 1, he's not weak in the faith. But he says, but the one who is weak eats only vegetables. The person weak in the faith is the person that is the vegetarian. And they're a vegetarian for religious reasons. They're not a vegetarian for health reasons. Anything like that. They're not a vegetarian because they feel bad for little animals. They're a vegetarian because they're afraid that eating meat offered to an idol, even if they don't know for sure that it's been offered to an idol, they're afraid that that might in some way impair their relationship to God. And so Paul, as he starts off, getting to, I think, one of the key problems with stability that believers are going to have. And we'd have to come, and I used the illustration of my friends and the issue of alcohol years ago, because that really could be a modern day application of this type of a scenario. And if you don't think it is, you just read to the end of the chapter and you find out that in addition to the two things he starts the chapter with, the two problems, I'm only looking at the one today, the one about eating meat, he brings in the issue of drinking wine at the end of the chapter. So some of them had associated drinking wine with their previous lifestyle, and they don't want anything to do with that anymore. So this is one of the issues that's going on, and this is one of the things that Paul talks about here that helps us understand that there are believers that lack stability. And if you're past that, if you're one of those people that says, well, go back to the illustration that we used to have. If you've got a friend that they came out of a culture in which they associate drinking alcohol with the wild partying and all the excess that went with it, and they want nothing to do with that anymore, then the wrong thing to do is to sit down and say, well, I know he has a problem with it, but I'm still going to crack a beer here tonight, and I'm going to drink a beer while we're visiting, or I'm going to serve wine at the table. That wouldn't be very kind, and that's what he's going to be getting to. Because if you're mature and you're strong in the faith, you want to do things to promote good faith in him, but you're going to do it the right way, not just by saying, oh, get over it, grow up. That's not the way you do it. He says you don't bring them in to these disputes over these areas where there's a divided opinion, where you're not all agreed on that. They're going to have to come to that conclusion in their time as God is working with them. And this is what you want to encourage in these people. This is how you want to be of help, rather than, in some way or another, impeding their progress. because you want to encourage them, as I encourage you every day. You want to encourage them to have a good day in the Lord. But they're going to have a tough time having a good day in the Lord if they think that their in the Lord relationship is in some way endangered by some activity that they associate with their previous lifestyle. I'm Pastor Tim Holscher. I want to thank you for joining me today. For those that are not aware of this, I post these videos Monday through Friday. There is down below here the opportunity to click a like on these and to share it. And clicking like and share actually helps these videos to be shared with and promoted for others that might benefit from it. We're not trying to grow this channel in any way, but just trying to make the material available to believers that may benefit from this. So you may want to consider that. But as always, have a good day in the Lord, and thank you for joining me.